We are a casual environment. We are casual. We are relaxed. We can meet the Lord wherever we are. So tonight, as we reflect back on the last couple of weeks, there was a lot of meat in chapter 1 all the way to the end. We kind of concluded chapter 1 all the way to chapter 2. And I really want chapter 1, second half of it, talks about a sobering mindset. When you hear that word sobering mindset, what comes to mind when you talk about sobering mindset? Think about it, sobering mindset.
In your right frame of mind.
Your right frame of mind. Clear. A focused mind. And it's amazing how. You remember how in the beginning he was really Peter was really trying to get us to focus on that there are going to be challenges in this Christian walk. There's going to be challenges, and we started this journey off by talking about being a Christian in a pagan society, and in the midst of that, the topic kind of changed on here that God is enough. God is enough, not necessarily just for Christian, but God is enough. And that speaks volumes to what we portray that our reality is in a sobering mind is what? Is God enough? Because you just said when a clear mind, our focus is different. A renewed mind. Why is that renewed? How does that renewed mind happen though? Because of what? Why do we get to a renewed mind?
Like when you go back and
study the word. That gives us, and what that does is stop us from doing what? Before we came to God, did we not rely on ourselves that there was some other stuff that we need to gain other than God? Because we would try to seek it, right? We would try to find it. We would try to go out there, and it's almost like what? We were drunk. All that stuff. Y'all seen people drunk before? How they just they should stop drinking, but they don't stop drinking. The more they drank, they became that. I don't want to say us, but you know, the airfield was like that. You was like one drink sometimes wasn't enough, and we were so consumed with that. And so, it's one that sobering mind is very important. And he hits on that early, right in the middle of the chapter. He hits on that idea. Watch this though. Also, you remember back in, I think it's verse 14, I think it was, make sure. 14. And I really want, all these questions drives us to the beginning of chapter 2. And I want to make sure that as we Bible study together, the first chapter was really be trying to get the meat out there. And from now on, it's going to be digging into what the word says. And I want us to see this. In 14, he says that we don't fashion ourselves like we used to. When we say that, how does that look? You know, when we hear that verse, because I think Peter's trying to show us a picture. What picture comes to mind when we talk about we're not going to fashion ourselves? Not going to fashion ourselves like our old selves. What picture do you see on that when he says, I'm not going to fashion myself like my old self?
Oh, I act like I used to do. I'm going to do the things I used to do. Be somebody new.
Even carrying yourself differently.
Carrying yourself differently.
Persona about yourself.
And go ahead.
I was just saying that it just makes me literally think of my appearance.
I'm not going to carry myself like a boy.
And remember, how do people perceive that though? Remember how if they see you now and they compare you to then, don't they see? They'll say, I ain't what man, I ain't never. Did y'all see that and now we don't even try to be that. Well, I don't even try to be that person I was when I was in. I was revert back to the military, but I was a rascal back then. I mean, I was a rascal. That's all I can say, man. I look like I say, is that even the same? Is that even the same person that? But remember, see how that goes. The sobering mind I'm not so attached to those things I was back then. Some of the stuff we still want to have in our life, we still want some, but I'm not attached to those things I used to be. And now, because I'm in the Word now, that I'm growing myself, it's like I said, it's my appearance. I used to dress differently. I used to just right. I'll leave that alone. I'm not even gonna touch that one. I'm not gonna touch that one. But in that verse he says that, and then after he says that, he goes right into this idea of holy. He goes from once your mind is sober, then after you become sober, you don't fashion yourself like you used to. And he put that point is that holy because he is holy. Now, how many people struggle with that? How many of y'all struggle with that holy, man? Being holy. And don't do you beat yourself up when you don't live up to that? Man, I pride myself on not losing my temper. I'm never at work. My staff has seen me get upset one time. That's because I had an employee that just was not listening. No matter what I said, she just was not listening. And I didn't get too angry. I just got louder and said, "You got to listen to me." But I pride myself. I know they never. Well, I lost it today. We have a CCU where we send our PDs, and Sister Lynch can attest to this. Now she got to do it no more. They don't know how to grade positions. That art has been lost on them. And we talked for an hour. At the end, I said, I don't care what you do with this PD. I ain't said it this way. I ain't used no profanity. But you can take this PD. I'm going to do what I want to do. Y'all crazy. I want to call them ignorant so bad in my mind. I just kept, but I said, you know what? We took an hour, and y'all still don't get the concept of what this is. Y'all have no idea. And I said, man, I left the meeting. I kept telling my assistant, I said, I'm sorry. I let those folk get the best of me. And that's what we talk about when we beat ourselves up. For the next hour, I beat myself up because I said, God, I let them get me up. I let them get me up to a point at work that I never let them. But they got to me today. they really got to me today. And the conclusion of it was, I ended up being right, and they agreed to me at the end, but it took us an hour to get to that point. So I said, I didn't want to deal with them anymore because they saw a bad side of me that I can't even go back to them anymore. Being holy, we just said it. How many we beat ourselves up on the slightest thing. But he said because he is holy. Be holy because he is holy. How many of y'all are God? We can never attain to what God is, but our goal is to be. This is what Paul says. This is what Peter and Paul agreed. He said we should be striving to be holy. So when we mess up, we don't stay laying down in the mud. How many of y'all have kids and they got dirty? And you told them stay out the dirt. And they went right back into the dirt. Right after you told them stay out the dirt. And sometimes you got the dirt, they don't get Joy just stayed there and explained, Joy, get out the sand. No, get out the sand. Get out the sand. And he says here, be holy. So I want y'all to see that picture. Our minds, our attitude towards life, and the goal to be who God called us to be. That's a picture that when we start to be Christian, what God wants us to be. So after he says, your mind, sober it up. When we say gird your lungs up, that means you can't just do everything like you want to. Gird yourself, say I got to protect myself. The very next section, he talks about love. How far should we go to love our brothers? How far should we go? What's the length we should go to love our brothers?
70 times
7. I love that because that means every 10 minutes of the day we should forgive it all. What I said was, when you do it, the math of that, that's every, I used to do this, every 9 minutes of the day. 7 to 9 minutes of the day. When they mess up, we should be forgiving them. And then we start over when the day start over. You got to love somebody a lot to go that far. But you're willing to forgive them no matter how many times they mess up. There's no limit to it. There's no day. Every 10 minutes of the day, we should forgive it all. Well, no, what I said was, when you do it, the math of that, that's every, I used to do this, every 9 minutes of the day. 7 to 9 minutes of the day. When they mess up, we should be forgiving them. And then we start over when the day start over. That's you gotta love somebody a lot to go that far. But you're willing to forgive them no matter how many times they mess up. There's no limit to it. There's no destination. Now, I specifically said, your brother. How far are we going to love our enemies? Now, do we classify that? Do we say, yeah, those who are not that bad? Do we have a limit to what we would do with those people? Jesus says, bless those who despitefully use you, misuse you, that have no good intention for you in your life. Now, if we be honest with ourselves, that's a special category of some folks that we have put in the box. And that we have said, until Hayes freeze over. Right? We got them in the box. Now hold up. Now we got a sober in mind. We're not fashioning ourselves like our old self. We clean ourselves up. We don't want people to perceive us in that old light anymore. And now we have a goal in mind to be who God calls us to be, holy. There you go, Lynch.
I can't help
Lynch.
it.
There you go, brother. There you go, brother.
Tormented. It's just when you know how the evidence of a person's conversion to serving the Most High calling is in his walk. It's not necessarily what he says. And I have a personal situation where they publicly confess one thing, and then I know they're doing a lot of wretched stuff going on, and they're not treating people well. And this happens to be somebody related to me, and I'm constantly that I got him in the box. I say I love him, but I got him in the box. Well, I love him. And I love him. And this conversation is really trying to figure out how do I deal with myself, because it's almost like I'm a hypocrite because I won't pull him out the box, even though you don't want to hang. They say when you become a changed man, you're supposed to change your company. Well, when this company has hereditary running through it, what do you do with that, kiddo? I guess I'm just looking for some input because
You still don't mistreat them.
I don't mistreat them.
But you keep them in the box.
I keep them in the box.
See, this is the thing.
And I'll do anything for them if they should call me. But
love says that we go full. For as Christ loved us, we should love others. And I know this is if I don't get anything else out of this lesson with 1 Peter, is if God is enough, do we put him in the box? Because we put others in the box. God, you are enough to take care of this stuff, all 88.3% of this. But the 11.7%, in this box of all, you're not big enough to take this. And see, this is why I wanted to paint this picture before we get to chapter 2 and have this discussion. Because this is really, to be honest, this is where Christianity meets the world. This is those who are in the world who's struggling with the idea of coming to Christ. Is that in their life, there have been so many people who will call themselves Christians, they have placed them in the box. And so now we'll reach out to those folk who have been hurt by the church folk. That now we want to get them out of the box and say, hey, come on over here. So come on, said, here at Rowlett Friendship, this is a safe zone for anybody who has ever been hurt by church. Who's looking for a place they can come in and say, you know what? I messed up today. You know what? I messed up a lot today. You know what? I messed up a lot this last week. And this week was a good week. They should be feared to come, because guess what? Sometimes, dude, I mess up a lot. My wife will tell y'all, he ain't perfect. He calls himself pastor, but he got issues. And I pray to God that he keeps letting his grace, which is enough. Because now I got a soul mind. I got the heart that leads towards who God is. I don't do the things I used to do. But I still do some stuff that makes me fall daily. Now, I'm not doing crazy stuff like I used to do, but I still have my own little sins in my life that beseech me every day. That if I'm not careful, I stumble and fall. That's why the goal is to be holy, not walk around like I am holy. And when I put people in my 11.3% box, I'm telling God, thank you for the 88.7, but 11.3 you can't handle it because you're not big enough. You're not good enough. And what God says, I'm going to give you 88.3% of your breath today. That means 11% of the day you got to find some kind of other way. You don't know if you can hold your breath 11% of the day. In my mind, I haven't calculated it out. At least what 11% of the day is probably at least 2 hours. So you take those 2 hours. You take that 120 minutes, and every once in a while you just, okay, God, got that minute out the way.
You make the point, saying, God is not big enough to handle this, so I'm trying to separate it. But I've also seen that sometimes I don't think like it's ever been a point where I didn't think God couldn't handle it, but I would take some things and put them in the box that I didn't want him to handle, because I wasn't ready for him to handle it yet. I knew if I put him out there for him, he's going to take care of it. I want to sit on it for a minute.
No, that's a very good point. Y'all know that some stuff, I didn't want God to take care of it right now because selflessly, I wanted to be able to use it. You know, sometimes we use stuff for motivation for the wrong reason. Sometimes we use it just for our own comfort. Sometimes we use stuff just because that's our crutch. Sometimes, so you're right. In that little box of ours, there's a bunch of toys in the little box. They're all the same train. There's some cars, there's some Batmans, there's some Indians and cowboys. And there's a lot of stuff we have in our box for different reasons why we haven't let go of that. All this leads us up to that now, the love part. And he spends a couple of verses in this chapter talking about our love and what we should be. And I ask that question, how far should we go for love? When we truly talk about love, how far should we go?
The word tells us that we don't know man nothing but to love them. So when they're not doing things that you know that is not of God, my experience is that I just make sure that what I'm doing is right.
Yes.
And just pray for them.
And that's the piece where God says, when you start to become sober in mindset, that you can now let some stuff go or give me some stuff that normally you wouldn't give away or you wouldn't let go and release. And a lot of stuff, we use forgiveness. A lot of stuff for forgiveness, we hold on to it because it makes us, I ain't shoot. Every time, stuff we forgot about as soon as we see him. Yeah. That was funny. That was funny to me. I'm sorry. It's funny. But when we look at that which God is doing in the midst of our life, and how He ends this whole chapter is, He says, when it's all said and done, it's the word of God that endures forever. That's verse 25. And He puts that there as He caveat the love. Everything in the word of God goes back to His love. God created us out of love in Genesis. God preserves us and secures us in Revelations out of love. And all between that, it talks about love. Even when we look at the Old Testament, He loved Israel so much, He let them mess up, then make up. Mess up, then make up. God preserves us and secures us in Revelations out of love. And all between that, it talks about love. Even when you look at the Old Testament, he loved Israel so much, he let them mess up, then make up. Mess up, then make up. Mess up and make up. Even so to the end, he said, I'm not going to talk to you for 400 years because you made me that mad. But even in the midst of that, God was still being evident in their life. And he gave his son and said, the ultimate sacrifice of love is for you to give me my child. Those who have kids, let me paint a picture for you right quick. Has your kid ever suffered with something or dealt with something that you said, Lord, don't let them deal with it, let me deal with it. Lord, take this, even if your kids are struggling in school and all that, whatever it is, Lord, don't let them struggle. Let me, Lord, don't let them struggle, Lord. Put that on me. We have that feeling. And if you ever had a sick child, and you like, Lord, just don't, Lord, I'd rather be sick than my child be sick. Especially when they're a little baby. Lord, just let me be sick. Lord, let me take on that stuff. I want you to paint that picture of what God did for us. That he loved us so much that he took our sickness and put it on his son. He put it on him. And so now that we paint this picture of his word, we discussed this. Let me ask this question about, as we go into chapter 2, let's read the first verse, and let's discuss that as we tie up this last piece of tonight. I told you, this section here from verses 13 to verse 1 Peter, first chapter 13 to 2 Peter, the 10th. 1 Peter, second chapter, verse 10, has three parts to it. It was a sobering, the fear of the Lord, the love we cover. Then this next section, verses 1 through 10 here, talks about growth. And look at verse 1. Let's read verse 1 together here. Let's look at verse 1 here, and we'll just ask a few questions, then we'll end in prayer. Wherefore, lay aside all malice, all guilt, all hypocrisies, envies, and all evil speaking. Talk about growth. Growth. We have the picture, our mind, sobering, building ourselves up. We also are looking at the fact that now we don't dress and act like we used to act. Our standard is God because he is holy. Through love we do all these things. And here we see the evidence of growth. And as we start to grow, what does it tell us to do? What's the first thing it says when we let grace grow us? What's the first thing it says we should do or not do? What's the first thing it says don't do? Lay aside all malice. Yeah, what does that mean to you when it says lay aside all malice? Let me define malice for you so you can give me a correct answer. The intent to injure or harm somebody, both stated or implied. Let me give you a picture. Boy, if you knew me 10 years ago, boy, that's all malice. The intent to injure or harm. How do we see that in our growth? It said lay aside that. How do you see that? What does that mean to you in your spiritual life, in your walk? What does that mean to you?
It's kind of like what the lady said a minute ago. Now when she see people doing wrong, she just pray for them instead. Kind of thought it's not even there. You just kind of wish the Lord on them, kind of help them through whatever. Praying for them.
And on the other side, when someone is doing you wrong, you're not trying to wish bad on them or evil. Yeah.
You ever
Don't do what Reverend McKinley did on the phone. He just got upset. I don't think I intentionally made that horn to him, but they just got on my last one. But the idea is when we look at this, it says lay aside. That's a heart thing.
Yeah, but if you harboring something in your heart against somebody, and you really, think in your mind you despise them, you gotta let that go. In order for you to even start going towards being holy, you gotta let that go.
And that's the thing. That's when I say, it's saying lay aside. Is that when I think about lay aside it, is when you see that person, that feeling you have, you gotta take it out and put it to the side. And then deal with the person.
Yeah.
You gotta deal with that person, smile with them. This is the same person. I always look at this. Our biggest challenges is those enemies of ours who have done us wrong, who we know they have done us wrong. And they know that we know they did us wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know they have intent to do us wrong again. But hey, how you doing? So, yeah, I'm good. You need some help? You fine? You good? And that's the biggest thing in our work environment, in our social environment, is when we know people have done us wrong, but we step up and go above them. And that's to lay aside. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to do, but when you do that, God said you heap coals upon their heads.
That's right.
They become then step stools. And when I teach this, when I say a step stool, what does a step stool do for you? And we'll end with malice and we'll end. What is a step? And you got a step stool. What makes you get to somewhere you couldn't get otherwise.
That's right.
So God says, by doing this, you make your enemies your step stool. That means you need them to get to a place you can't get to. And sometimes you gotta love them into their position. Because they don't want to be a step stool, but you gotta love them into their position. So now you're able to go, no, I ain't like to do that, Lord. Oh, but it was my enemies. Not that, watch this, and I'm here with this. They then become your cheerleaders. That because you were so good to them, and trust me, God has revealed this many times, that the same people that meant you wrong are saying, man, Alton, he's a good guy, he'll help you out. Now, years later, they want to speak to you and talk to you and was trying to do their work. Now they may want, yep. If you go see, Alton's good, you need to go. The same people elevate you to a place you couldn't be to. Because what? Instead of keeping malice on the inside, with the intent to injure or harm, both implied and spoken. Now we don't do that anymore. And guess what they do? They don't understand why you don't do them. Because what? Because grace allows you to have some growth. It allowed me to lay aside malice. And so the folk I used to want to hit, I just shake their hand and love them to God. Folk I want to trip down the stairs, used to a long time ago, I want to help them up the stairs. The folk I was just woo, 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 woo. Now I just love, 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 love. And God has opened doors of relationships.
That's right.
Of people who not supposed to help you, that's helping you now. It might have only helped you and not helped the other 5 folk next to you. But for some reason, they picked you out to help you out. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, Reverend Jackson, what he was saying about that could be a burden on you and stuff like that. Some people think, exactly. Some people think that you can give your way out of it. The ties and all. You can't give your way out of it. You need a malice against someone. God only wants until you make it right with that brother.
Yeah, I heard somebody say something about, can't remember who it was, this rich guy, always been just a philanthropist. What the word is, y'all know the word. A big word for the night, a thesaurus word for the night. Rich folk will give money away, how about that? You got it? that, man, there's a place reserved for them in heaven. It might be, but not because of the money they give.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the relationship they have with God. Now, I don't know that person from Adam or whatever, but I can't just say, man, Man, they give $1 million away. But their tithe should be $5 million. They just something people look at them, look good. I don't know. I'm just saying. We got to be careful with that because you're right. You can't pay your way. You can't bribe your way. You can't, title your way. I'm titled. I'm Dr. Whatever. I got 8 PhD. No, you just can't impress your way there. So it starts.
Cover the
Multitude of sins.
Yeah, and how can you say you love God and whom you have not seen? And then you hate your brother who you see every day. How can you do that?
That's how come racism, both sides of it, from all angles. White not liking black, blacks not liking white, Hispanic. I don't understand that. And if we call ourselves Christians,
Right.
the color, your creed does not determine whether I love you or not.
Yeah.
Is if you accept the same Jesus Christ I know.
Okay.
Then we become brothers. And regardless of what your size, your color, your height, your like, your dislike, I love you in the name of Jesus. May God bless you and keep you is our prayer. Thank you guys again for coming out. We look forward continually. And this is our